My name is Elias. For 7 years, my life felt like a scene from a hand-drawn masterpiece. We lived in a small, cedar-clad house at the edge of a birch forest, far enough from the city that the only traffic we heard was the rustle of leaves and the occasional kettle whistle. Clara was my everything. She had this way of moving through the world, soft, deliberate, always smelling like Earl Grey and rain. We were the perfect couple. Our friends joked that we lived in a fairy tale. But even the most beautiful paintings can develop cracks if the foundation is rotting. The change wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, agonizing cooling of the air. It started with the projects at the gallery. Clara, who used to rush home to garden with me, started coming back late, long after the sun had dipped behind the hills. She'd walk into our kitchen, her boots clicking sharply against the wood floor, a sound that felt too aggressive for our quiet home. "Just a busy season, Elle," she'd say, her eyes never quite meeting mine. She started sleeping with her phone tucked under her pillow. When I'd reach for her in the middle of the night, she'd stiffen, her breath hitching as if my touch was an intrusion. The first real glitch happened on a Tuesday. I found a receipt in the pocket of her favorite linen coat, the one I bought her for our anniversary. It was for a high-end hotel in the city, dated for a night she said she was working late at the studio. My heart did a slow, sickening roll in my chest, like a stone dropping into a deep well. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself she was helping a friend. I wanted to believe the lie because the truth felt like it would burn our beautiful house to the ground. I sat by the window that evening, watching the golden light fade into a bruised purple over the trees, listening to the rhythmic thud-thud of my own heart. I didn't know then that the woman coming home wasn't the Clara I married. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. The suspicion didn't just sit in my chest, it vibrated there, a low hum that made my hand shake whenever I picked up a teacup. I spent 3 days living in a fog, watching Clara move through our sun-drenched kitchen like she was a character in a movie I no longer understood. She was still humming while she watered the ferns, still wearing the oversized wool sweaters I loved, but her eyes were always somewhere else, somewhere miles away from our little cottage. The sudden event that shattered everything happened on a rainy Friday. Clara had left for another emergency meeting at the gallery, leaving her old laptop behind on the oak desk by the window. Usually, I'd never touch her things. Privacy was a pillar of our sanctuary. But a notification pinged and the screen flickered to life. It wasn't an email from a client. It was a shared cloud folder titled Our Secret Garden. My breath hitched. I clicked it, my mouse hovering over the icons like I was holding a live wire. Inside were hundreds of photos. They weren't of art or landscapes. They were of Clara, my Clara, in hotel rooms I didn't recognize, wearing lingerie I'd never seen, laughing into the camera with a man who wasn't me. It was Julian, my best friend, my business partner, the man who had stood beside me at our wedding, toast in hand, promising to always have our backs. The betrayal wasn't just a sting, it was a physical amputation. I scrolled through timestamps that went back 18 months. While I was working double shifts to pay off the mortgage on our dream home, they were spending my money on weekend getaways. While I was sitting by the fireplace waiting for her to come home, she was sending him voice notes about how suffocating our quiet life had become. The sensory details of that moment are burned into my brain. The sound of the rain drumming relentlessly on the tin roof, the smell of the damp earth drifting through the cracked window, and the cold, clinical glow of the laptop screen. I felt a sudden, violent urge to scream, to tear the wallpaper off the walls, to break every piece of porcelain we'd collected together. But instead, I just sat there in the dim light, listening to the clock on the mantel tick, drop, drop, like blood hitting the floor. I heard the gravel crunch in the driveway. The headlights swept across the wall, momentarily blinding me. She was home. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of damp night air and the scent of wet pine. Clara stepped into the hallway, humming that same soft tune she always did, shaking the rain off her yellow raincoat. She looked so familiar, the stray strand of hair tucked behind her ear, the silver locket I'd given her bouncing against her chest. It was a cognitive dissonance that made my stomach churn. She looked like my sanctuary, but she smelled like a betrayal. "Elias? Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, her voice light, practiced. She reached for the lamp, and the room flooded with that warm, amber Ghibli glow. But for the first time, the light didn't feel cozy, it felt exposing. I didn't move. I just pointed at the laptop screen, still glowing with the image of her and Julian in a sun-drenched hotel room in Tuscany, a trip she told me was a solo retreat for her soul. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't a sudden scream or a gasp. It was the sound of a person's soul leaving their body. Her face went from a healthy, rosy flush to a sickly, translucent white. The grocery bag she was holding slipped from her hand, a carton of eggs shattering on the hardwood floor with a dull, wet thud. The golden yolk spread across the wood like a spreading stain. "It's not... I can explain," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Explain 18 months, Clara? Explain Julian?" I finally spoke, and my voice sounded like it belonged to a dead man, flat, hollow, devoid of the warmth we'd built here. Then came the sudden shift. When the lies failed, the defenses went up. Her guilt turned into a sharp, jagged weapon. "You were never here," she snapped, her eyes filling with tears that felt more like frustration than regret. "You turned me into a decoration in your Museum of Peace." She told me she loved him because he made her feel electric, while I made her feel settled. Every word was a needle under my fingernails. She admitted everything in a frantic, ugly blur, the money she'd funneled from our joint savings to fund their getaways, the nights she spent laughing at my simplicity while lying in his arms. I watched her cry, and for the first time in a decade, I felt absolutely nothing. I didn't want to comfort her, I didn't want to argue. I just watched the steam rise from the forgotten kettle on the stove, a soft, rhythmic hiss that was the only honest thing left in the room. The woman I loved was a ghost, and the person standing over the broken eggs was someone I didn't know at all. The days that followed the confrontation felt like living inside a faded photograph. The house, once my sanctuary, became a museum of ghosts. I spent hours sitting on the porch, watching the mist roll off the birch trees, but the birdsong sounded discordant, and the rustle of the leaves felt like whispering voices mocking my blindness. The sudden reality of her absence was a physical weight. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., the cold side of the bed a vast frozen tundra. I'd walk into the kitchen, smelling the faint lingering scent of her Earl Grey tea, and for a split second, I'd forget. I'd reach for 2 mugs instead of 1, only to feel the phantom pain of the betrayal rip through my chest all over again. The anger came first, a hot, jagged thing that made me want to burn every canvas she'd ever painted in the garden. I found myself throwing her favorite ceramic vase against the stone fireplace just to hear something shatter as loudly as I felt. But the anger didn't last. It was replaced by a crushing, silent sadness. I kept thinking about the small betrayals. How many times had she looked me in the eye and told me she loved me while her phone buzzed with a message from Julian? How many times had I cooked her favorite dinner while she was planning her next escape? The treachery wasn't just in the physical act, it was in the 1,000 tiny lies that had woven a shroud over our entire life. I looked at the photos of us on the mantel, the one from the summer festival where we were covered in flower petals, laughing under the paper lanterns. I realized then that I wasn't just mourning a woman, I was mourning a version of myself. I was mourning the man who believed in forever. One evening, as the rain tapped gently against the glass, that soft, rhythmic ASMR sound that used to bring me peace, I realized I couldn't stay here. Every floorboard creaked with a memory. Every shadow in the corner looked like her turning away from me. The The cozy Ghibli life I'd built was a stage set, and the play was over. I wasn't a character in a romance anymore. I was a man standing in the ruins of a dream, waiting for the sun to go down so I wouldn't have to see the empty chairs. The resolution didn't come with a grand gesture or a dramatic cinematic goodbye. It came in the quiet of a Tuesday morning as the sun began to burn the mist off the birch trees. I sat at the oak table with a stack of papers and a single suitcase. I had decided I was selling the cottage. The sanctuary I'd built for us had become a cage of reminders, and I couldn't breathe in a house that echoed with lies. The sudden clarity hit me when I saw Clara one last time to sign the papers. She looked tired. The electric glow she claimed Julian gave her had already started to dim, replaced by the harsh, gray reality of a relationship built on the wreckage of a marriage. She tried to apologize again, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Elias, I never meant to destroy everything," she whispered. I looked at her, and for the first time, the pain didn't flare up. It just felt heavy, like a smooth river stone. "You didn't just destroy the marriage, Clara," I said, my voice steady against the soft rustle of the wind outside. "You destroyed the person I was when I was with you, and honestly, maybe he needed to go." I walked out of that cottage and didn't look back. I moved to a small apartment in a different town, a place with no garden, no cedar walls, and no ghosts. I started over. I learned to drink my tea in silence without waiting for someone else's hum to fill the gaps. I learned that peace isn't a place you build for someone else. It's a state of mind you protect for yourself. To anyone reading this, sitting in a perfect life that feels just a little bit too cold, trust your gut. If the shadows in your Ghibli perfect world start to feel long and distorted, don't ignore them. Don't build a cathedral for someone who is looking for the exit. I still love the sound of rain on a tin roof. I still love the smell of birchwood and the way the golden hour hits a wooden floor. But now when I hear those sounds, they belong to me. I am the protagonist of my own story again. And this time, the ending isn't a betrayal. It's a beginning.